topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, joining you live from Dallas, Texas, home base for me. If we've not met yet and you don't know me, I'm a management consultant, organizational logotherapist, speaker, and author. My team and I at Elise Cortez and Associates help companies to enliven their operations by articulating their purpose and building inspirational leaders and cultures activated by meaning and purpose to turn those companies from a flatline EKG to a vibrant workplace. There, people are intrinsically motivated to perform at their best, grow to their fuller potential, and are committed to stay and help deliver on the company's mission. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at EliseCortez.com. Now, with us today in today's program, we have two authors, co-authors of Don't Wait for Someone Else to Fix It. They're also the co-founders of Think to Perform, a high-performance leadership development firm servicing small and large organizations in a variety of industries. They are Doug Lennick and Chuck Wackendorfer. We'll be talking about the 8 essential behaviors they treat in the book for developing high-performance leadership. Doug joins us from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Chuck joins us from Denver, Colorado. Doug and Chuck, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thanks, Elise. Great to be here.
Yeah, excited to be here.
I love it when I meet astoundingly interesting people I would otherwise have no business running into because you wrote a fantastic book and your PR person found me. So let's just first start by celebrating this thing you brought into the world. Don't wait for someone else to fix it. So I appreciate that, having written a couple of books. I know what it takes to bring a book into the world. It is harder than childbirth, by the way, just in case you're wondering.
We wouldn't know.
Right. Well, let me just tell you, been through both. So I do know. So anyway, how's that, guys? Okay, well, let's start here. I really appreciate you situate us early on in your book here. And you, of course, you guys are longtime leaders of your own right and have helped develop thousands and maybe tens of thousands of leaders yourselves over the years. And you start with the statement that you put forth at the beginning of the book that says, it's about creating a safer, happier, and healthier world is in our hands. You don't get to choose whether or not to be a leader. You only get to choose what kind of leader you'll be. I love that smack in your face statement. Let's start there.
Well, we basically, our position is pretty straightforward, and Chuck and I have felt this way for as long as we've known each other, which is going on 40 years now, that everybody is influencing somebody, and everybody is being influenced by somebody or something. So we simply make the case, leadership is that which one does to influence the behavior of another. And because that's the truth, all of us are leaders.
Works for me.
I think the other thing at least we ran into was, it's kind of the title of our book, Don't Wait for Somebody Else to Fix It. If I believe that leadership is a title or a position, and I don't have that title or position, then it's not my job. Right. And so there's this well, he or she must see it because it's their job. They have the office, they have the title, they have the position. And, really to fix a lot of the issues that I think your show focuses on, which is to make a better place in the world, to create a better work environment for everybody, we all have to step up. And that was really the essence of the idea of the book. Doug and I were there's 1,500 leadership books published a year. We wanted to write a book that would impact anybody, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
regardless of title.
I love that. I really love that. I appreciate that. The other thing that I love about what you guys are talking about here is, working inside organizations myself, what happens is if people don't have the idea that, don't wait for somebody else to fix it, it's too easy to blame the behavior of the leaders that maybe do or don't get the results that they expect. When here, what you're doing is you're enrolling everyone to be a leader. So I really want to applaud that. Let me also situate, if there's a lot of noise coming from my mic, listeners, viewers, we're having a fantastic thunderstorm here in Dallas, Texas. So welcome to the tropics here in Dallas, in case you're hearing booms and thunder. So, but I do want to really applaud that, you're reaching through those pages and saying, hey man, nobody's off the hook here. Come with us.
Well, we all get caught waiting sometimes, wishing that other people would change their behavior. And if they did, my life would be better.
Right.
And I think that's the essence of the leadership logic chain that we're starting to reference is like, we work with a lot of firms, organizations where they don't say it this way, but they bring us in because if you just fix these other people over here, we'll be fine. And what we help them realize is how they contribute to the issues they see in other people.
Yeah.
And the only person's behavior we can control is our own. That's part of what we call the 3 bucket theory. Bucket 1 is what I can control. Bucket 2 is what I can influence. Bucket 3 is what I don't have any control over. And there's only one thing in bucket number 1, and that's my behavior.
Mm-hmm. Doug, you're going to add?
That's the terrible part, as Chuck was saying.
Right.
Most people are pretty gifted at seeing what's wrong with other people. Like, I'm fine, but you have a problem. And so we get that quite frequently, as Chuck says. A lot of people, in essence, a lot of organizations, a lot of leaders will say something almost as silly as this: if it wasn't for the people, this would be a great place to work.
Oh, I've heard it so many times, Doug. Let's just do it. Let's get rid of all the people. We'll fix everything right here, right now. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. So to speaking of that, that was one thing to your point, Chuck. I was enamored with your logic chain idea. And I also appreciate that you say the leadership logic chain guides you to implement 3 crucial stages of effective, intelligent leadership. And they include self-awareness. They also include this idea of decision-making, and then of course, self-management. And I really appreciate the emphasis you put on all 3, and certainly the quality of decision-making. So maybe you could just speak a little bit to those 3 pieces there.
Yeah, we make, as we mentioned in the book, about 35,000 decisions a day. It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about that. I don't think it's like I did the math. It's, something like 1,500 decisions an hour.
Yeah,
you're awake for 24 hours, which we're not. But not all of them do we have to make better. But if we made 1 or 2 better choices a day, you're talking about 500, 600, 700 better decisions a year. And if you've ever been to any kind of reunion, family or school reunion, you know what I'm talking about, where you walk in the room and you see everybody you used to hang out with, and somebody spots you from across the room. They go, "Hey, Elise, how are you?" And you have no idea who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you go, "Oh, that's Chuck." And the next pop that is, hopefully it's your inside voice, says, like, "What the hell happened to that guy?" Like that's 35,000 decisions a day over 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of life. I mean, that's what you were all doing the same thing at the same time, but decision-making takes our lives in very different directions. And decision-making is the biggest driver of performance in any area of life. I don't care what you do for a living.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things we talk about with that, Elise, is this concept that our performance in life, in every dimension of our life, is really a function of kind of our raw material, what we call talent, plus the skills we develop to use our raw material, plus decision making. And as Chuck was saying, decision making has more than twice as much impact on one's actual result than the other 2 combined. So this is a really big deal. And that's why deciding wisely is such a big thing, and why this whole notion of influencing others by managing ourselves is so critical. those decisions really, really matter, and they add up.
Beautiful, Doug. One thing about this show, it's been amazing. I've been hosting the show for 8.25 years. I think you guys are episode 433. And I keep doing it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I keep doing it because I meet amazing people like you and I learn so much. And so to that point, Doug, a couple episodes ago we had Dr. Sheila Olson talking about her book that she co-authored, which is called Wise Decisions. The whole book was all about how to make wise decisions. So yes, I completely am bought into the idea that our impact is greatly facilitated by the quality of decisions that we make as leaders. So I just really wanted to emphasize that to our listeners and viewers, that there's a lot of meat in what you gave us there.
And one thing I would add to this, and when we did the logic chain, Chuck was actually the one who realized we needed to add decision making. I was trying to make it simpler, but it got too simple, and the decision making piece is really the most critical. And similar to our leadership logic chain, that was a critical piece to be added. And one of the things that we find is a lot of people just lack the tools. They don't really know themselves well enough to realize their decision making hasn't been that good.
Right.
And the lack of self-awareness is significant. And that's why that's such a big part of all of this. Most people don't know themselves nearly as well as they imagine they must.
Well, Doug, here's the good news to that. That's why I know I have a job. Because I do help, part of the work that I get to do is to help leaders to understand themselves. And that's why I think your work that you put forth, these 8 essential, what I'm calling behaviors, is so critical. The first one being aim to be your ideal self. And so I really find it's amazing to me, people I meet in their 40s and 50s who don't know their strengths, don't know some of their basic personality types, don't know their decision-making style. So completely agree with you, which is why they need us here. So what I wanted to do here, gentlemen, is I just wanted to touch a little bit on each one of your 8 essential areas here and pull out the bits that that really spoke to me, because I want the readers or the listeners and viewers to read your actual book. I just want to call out a few of the things that I thought that really pulled me. So the first essential behavior, as I said, is aim to be your ideal self. And I really like the alignment model that you came up with there with those 3 frames. Can you speak a bit to those 3 frames for us?
Doug, I think that Doug was the author of the alignment model. So Doug, you should.
Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, I could speak to that, because the concept that we talk about is the headline is the most effective leaders, the most effective influencers of others are people who live in alignment most of the time, and they help other people do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So the alignment model is really the answer to the question, how will I know I'm managing myself well? Because the logic chain says effective leadership of others is a function of effective management of myself, which is a function of decision making, which is a function of self-awareness. So the alignment model answers the question, how will I know I'm managing myself well? And the answer is, I will actually be the person I am aiming to be. I am aiming to be my ideal self. That person is found in the first frame. The first frame is the ideal self frame. That's the principles and the values that guide us.
Yes.
The third frame is the reality frame. That's the frame of thoughts and emotions and behaviors, physical behaviors. That's that frame. And in the middle frame is our purpose, where you fit, and our goals. Having a purpose. The most effective people live in alignment and on purpose, and they help others do the same. And when it comes to purpose, that's a double word, a double entendre. Is that how you say that?
Yes, you did great.
So one is what I do intentionally on purpose. And what I do is with a purpose. I do it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Example, my purpose is to help myself and others achieve our highest and greatest potential. That's what my purpose is. And what I try to do is align my behaviors intentionally with that, and in turn my ideal self. So that's the alignment model. I don't know, Chuck, would you add anything as a...
I think, yeah, just piling on a little bit, it's not about perfection, right? Part of the human condition is none of us is perfect. So but the question is, can I be my ideal self more often? And when I'm not, can I correct it a little faster? And when you ask people if they have values, so frame one is values. So when you ask people if they have values, most people act insulted. What do you mean? Of course I have values.
But they can't name them. Yeah.
That is the second question, which is what are they? And that's when it gets kind of fuzzy. So to Doug's point, we have an exercise, and
I love what's on your website too, by the way. The values card is fantastic.
Yeah, so you can take it for free at thinktoperform.com to identify your top 5 values. Why 5? Because 5 is what I can remember.
Right.
If I can't remember my values, then I can't use them to guide my decision making.
Right.
So it's knowing my values and remembering them, and increases the odds that I use them when making a decision. So it increases the odds, as Doug is saying, to be my ideal self more often.
Beautiful. And on that note, guys, let's grab our first break. It goes so fast. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Doug Lennick and Chuck Wackendorfer. They are the co-authors of Don't Wait for Someone Else to Fix It. We've been talking a bit about what's behind this notion of really enrolling everyone as a leader, because we need everyone full throttle. And now just getting into some of the essential behaviors. After the break, we're going to get into, with regard to knowing our real self, some of the common errors we make in knowing ourselves. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us. Before we get back into the program, I want to share with you something pretty exciting, I think at least. It's about the Purpose and Joy Tour. This is a collaboration with Joyly, an organization that teaches mindful practices to build happy, healthy, resilient world, and my firm, Elise Cortez and Associates, that activates meaning and purpose in company culture and leadership to increase fulfillment, performance, and retention. Together, this is crazy, wait for it, we are going to 33 cities across the United States. We started in Dallas in March, and we're finishing in Virginia Beach in October to find our tribe and build a community of people who seek to elevate their lives and businesses by cultivating meaning, purpose, and joy. You can find a list of cities, dates, and planned events at gusto-now.com, and then go to the events and tour tab and find your city and the date. So see you there, find it, you can register, look what's available, register in advance, and tell your friends. If you are just joining the program, my guests are Doug Lennick and Chuck Wackendorfer. They are the co-authors of Don't Wait for Someone Else to Fix It, and the co-founders of Think to Perform, a high-performance leadership development firm serving small and large organizations in a variety of industries. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. So one of the things that I thought was interesting about your next behavior here, number 2, is know your real self. And what I wanted to really get you both to speak to is some of the common errors that we make in knowing ourselves. Could you just give us a couple, mistakes that we make in that regard?
Well, I'll start with one. I think the most common behavioral issue, I think, with knowing our real self is not realizing how often our minds wander from what it is we think we are doing. So now, fortunately, because all three of us are trained on this, we actually are able to stay focused for a period of time, probably longer than most. But it's quite common for someone to get in like a conversation. Let's say you and I are talking to one another, Elise, and I'm doing, kind of the pretend I'm listening thing. I don't know I'm not listening, but I have figured this out. Guys do this a lot, by the way. I hate to say it, but we often do this when we're talking to our spouses or significant others, and we're nodding and smiling, and I'm nodding and smiling, and then an unusual look comes over your face. And I think,
Recognize that look.
Smile, yeah, my nod, my smile were probably inappropriate for whatever it was she said. I wonder what she said. Moreover, I wonder when I quit listening. I don't know. I don't even know when I stopped listening. Worse, we read books. Somebody's read your book or my book, our book. They read our books. They get to the end of the chapter and they go, what the heck did I just read? Think of that. That's me reading to myself and not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So most people just don't realize how often their mind wanders from whatever it is they thought they were doing.
Mm.
I think the other part about self-awareness, Elise, is most of the way we live our lives, we live out of a part of our brain called the basal ganglia. That's the habit center part of our brain. Mm-hmm. So 90% of what we do because we've always done it that way. And right. What happens is, as we get older and our lives change, some of the patterns that used to work for us stop working, but we keep demonstrating the same pattern. And it's the self-awareness piece where you recognize, well, I'm not getting the result I want. Maybe it's the pattern of behavior that I'm demonstrating. I'll give you an example. It's actually an example in the book. I worked with a female executive about 10 years ago. Her name was Sharon. Sharon was very successful and miserable. And, she had this pattern where she'd go to work at 7:30 in the morning, work till about 8 o'clock at night, skip lunch, eat one meal at about 9 o'clock at night, go to bed at 11 o'clock and do it again all day, every day. She had a stay-at-home husband. She had 2 adult children that lived at her home. She was about 100 pounds overweight, and she was very unhappy. And so one of the homework items we gave her was to pay attention to how often she was sacrificing her own needs. Mm-hmm. And she came back a few weeks later and she said, I don't even know what my needs are.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Sharon, where did you learn that your needs didn't matter? And without any hesitation, she said, I was raised by a single mom. And when I was 7 years old, my mom came down with cancer. And so from the time I was 7 till when she died when I was 11 years old, I was there to take care of my mom. Now, that's what Sharon needed to survive as a child, but counter to what most people learn, their parents take care of them. Sharon learned she took care of her mom. And it was a pattern she continued into her 50s. And so behavioral change begins with self-awareness. It's noticing this pattern of behavior and then understanding where it came from, because I started it at some reason because I got the result I needed, and then deciding what, if anything, I want to do about that pattern. That's the real value in self-awareness. It's paying attention in the moment, as Doug's saying, but then it's, broader level, like when I'm happy, why am I happy? What am I doing? Who am I with? If you believe you're happier, when you're happier, you do better. Noticing when you're happy is really important. If I'm worn out and exhausted, why is that? What am I doing? How often is that happening to me? That's where self-awareness can become so important.
That was a beautiful illustration, Chuck. And definitely, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to this. All of us are run by these patterns, right? And so I love what we're talking about here, the opportunity to just get present to these patterns that are running us, because we live automated lives. So that was beautifully illustrated. Okay, now if we go into essential behavior number 3, ignite integrity and responsibility. What I want to just say about this, and if one of you could speak to this, you say in that particular behavior, you say, and I quote, by admitting mistakes, you encourage others to take smart risks, fostering innovation and superior performance. And then you go on to talk about what, Miles Davis says is once you hit a wrong note, it's the next one that makes it all good or bad. But that thing about admitting mistakes, I know so many leaders who believe that they're supposed to know it all, have it all down. And so God forbid, I couldn't possibly admit a mistake. And I think this is really powerful. So if one of you could speak to this essential behavior of admitting mistakes through the lens of igniting integrity and responsibility.
Well, this admitting mistake, I will. I have to admit, I make a bunch of them. And earlier in my career, it was a harder thing for me to do was to admit the mistakes. And I found that by failing to do so, I essentially sucked out of the organization the courage that people need to have in order to admit mistakes so that things can be corrected. And I also found, when we talk about igniting integrity and responsibility, when we developed the concept of the moral competency inventory, my personal lowest score, and I think I'm a highly integral person, my lowest score was standing up for what's right. I would occasionally witness the wrong behavior in the workforce, and rather than call it out, I would look the other way or act like I didn't get it. And that destroys trust. So when we talk about igniting integrity and responsibility, it's really critical for the health and well-being of the organization, because and Chuck knows Stephen M. R. Covey. I've met him but don't know him. I knew his dad, but he wrote the book Speed of Trust. When you have integrity, you create trust. And we're talking behavioral integrity, which is more than not lying. Not lying is as easy as not saying anything. If you don't say anything, you won't have lied. When I didn't stand up for what's right, I didn't lie. I just didn't say anything. Now, I didn't tell the truth, but I didn't lie. And so we can hide behind non-behaviors, but what we're talking about is behavioral integrity. Tell the truth. Stand up for what's right. Keep your promises. These are behaviors. When those behaviors exist, trust exists. And the speed of trust is fast coming down, slow going up. You can destroy it quickly. And being responsible. I am personally responsible for, we grew fast last year. A number of the things, there's growing pains that happen. Our 20th year, we had a great growth year. Well, guess what? When you grow too fast, you outrun your supplies. And a lot of my commitments I didn't keep. I had to admit that. I admit that every day. So I wish I was perfect. I am not. I make mistakes. And I must tell you, I find it remarkably uninspiring when people are unwilling to admit they do also. So with that, that's kind of the whole enchilada on it.
Okay. A couple of things, Doug. That was awesome. That was totally right there, worth the price of admission. A couple of things. First, thank you for modeling what it looks like to admit mistakes. That's what it looks like, ladies and gentlemen. You are real. You're vulnerable. You're this human being with flaws walking about the planet. Beautiful. So that's the first thing I want to say, Doug. Thank you for showing us how it's done. Secondly, Stephen M. R. Covey was on the show as well, and he is a beautiful man. And I got to have a beautiful conversation with him, and he's the real deal. So I just want to celebrate him once again, as you brought him up too. So more we could say about that, but I want to keep going because there's so much goodness in your book that I want to cover. But before I do, Chuck, did you want to weigh into something real quick?
I just going to tie back to your point around creativity. In order to grow, we have to be willing to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we have
talk
to
about that.
We're willing to try new things. Well, when I try new things, the odds of me making mistakes goes up. So when companies want to grow, They have to encourage their people to try new things. If I take people's heads off,
Right.
we pretend they make a mistake, or I'm unwilling to admit my own mistakes, I don't create, to the point that Doug and Stephen M. R. Covey were making, an environment of trust. People keep their heads down and play it safe. I don't get people's best efforts.
That's right.
That's the connection to admitting mistakes.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And there's more I wanted to say about that, but I do want to hit this next number, essential behavior number 4, embracing empathy and compassion, because that also, of course, speaks to eliciting creativity. But gosh, I can't think of a leadership book today that doesn't somehow speak to emotional intelligence and empathy. But the way you guys do this, which I think is really beautiful, is you contrast empathy and compassion. I'll just do that quickly, and then I would love for one of you to talk about the empathy compassion pathway. But the way you distinguish this is you say empathy is the ability to understand and appreciate what others are thinking, feeling, and doing, and why. Gorgeous. Compassion, on the other hand, you say, involves taking the next step, using what we have come to empathetically understand about others to show that we care about them concretely. Mm-hmm. That is probably the best distinguishing piece that I have seen on empathy and compassion. So hats off, gentlemen. And now if one of you could speak a bit more to the empathy compassion pathway, you have 4 steps in that. If one of you could speak to those, it'd be great.
You want to go, Chuck?
No, I was going to let you go for it.
All right. So one of the things when we think about being empathetic, and as you mentioned, and I really appreciate how you set it up, Elise, because as we talk about it, compassion is empathy in action. Mm. And when we talk about don't wait for somebody else to fix it, the title of the book, there are a lot of empathetic people waiting for somebody else to fix it. They see the problems that others have. So to be empathetic and compassionate, it really starts with understanding somebody else. And that begins with kind of a curiosity. So I actually want, if I don't care, don't ask.
Right.
And this is Stephen R. Covey. So the Stephen R. Covey 7 Habits, this is seek first to understand.
Right. Yeah.
And you genuinely, and this is understand the person, not just their problem. Understand the person, seek to understand, be curious about that. We're gifted, Covey would talk about the gifts that we've been given. We have this gift of curiosity. We have an imagination that Chuck talked about, and we have this self-awareness. I want to use all of that stuff in getting in touch with somebody else. And one of the people that we've worked with over the years, who's at Harvard University, her name is Helen Reese, Dr. Helen Reese. You may be familiar with her work on empathy. And empathy is really just getting in touch. Be curious. And what we know to be true is if I'm curious and I ask you about yourself, I will get to know you. And I will get to understand you from the inside out.
Right.
And so I need to know who you are on the inside. So what are your values? What do you care about? And I'd like for you to get to know me too, because we want to build a little bit of trust in this process. Mm-hmm. So it starts with, and she uses an acronym, but think of E as eye contact. We're not in the same room, but we can have some eye contact. I can look into your eyes, but our eyes tell us something. And there's these mirror neurons that are actually helping us biologically, physiologically pattern one another. So if I maintain eye contact with you, we will begin to pattern one another's behavior. Pay attention to what the face is saying. Muscle. M, muscle. What's your muscle? What's your face say? P, what's your posture say? A, what's the affect of all of this? T, what's the tone? So pay attention to somebody. And when we do that, we can be empathetic. And what we're talking about, even in the 4 R's, when we talk about paying attention to someone, The first R is self-awareness. Pay attention to self. The second R, or the second part of the first R of recognition, is recognize the other person. That's empathy. And then recognize what is stimulating us, what's making us feel the way we feel. And then we can bridge our way into being compassionate, which is, now what can I do about it? How can I actually help and not just hope someone comes along and saves you? So I feel bad for you, Elise. I surely hope someone does something.
Right.
I think it gets back to the point around influence. If my job as a leader is to influence other people's behavior, that's part of what I'm trying to go for. Sometimes people get stuck emotionally, like they don't understand something, or they have an issue outside of work, the car accident, a health issue, whatever it is, something that emotionally paralyzes them. If I'm not empathetic to that, if I'm not in tune with that, I can miss that, and they stay stuck. So the empathy pathway, compassion pathway is, I recognize, it's not sympathy. I recognize how you're feeling. How do I do that? It's when I say, you look upset. You look concerned. You sound excited. I try and name it. And if they say, yes, I am upset, well, then it leads me to the second step, which is, tell me more. What's going on? Let's get to the bottom of that. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is I feel what you feel. Empathy is I recognize what you feel. Right. So tell me why you're stressed. Tell me why you're upset. Well, I had this happen. Now that gets to the third step, which is I can help you deal with it. And we put together a plan to help you overcome it. It's not me buying into what happened to you, but it's helping you deal with it. That's the compassionate part.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And then they feel supported, and then I'll do anything for you, right? Because you get me, and you're trying to help me. So let's grab our last break on that note. I didn't want to stop you because I just was so into the moment, and you were generating it so beautifully. But let's grab our last break here. I'm Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Doug Lennick and Chuck Wackendorfer. They are the co-authors of Don't Wait for Someone Else to Fix It. We've been talking a bit about some of the essential behaviors in the book. After the break, we're going to finish with a couple more. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us, and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I mentioned in the last break about the launch of, and so far we've been, I think, to 12 or 13 cities of the Purpose and Joy Tour. The latest two books that I wrote will be part of those events of the tour experience. They are The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business, which helps leaders to learn how to build elevating and high-performing cultures in leadership. It's my latest bout of research. The other latest book is called Coloring Life, How Loss Invites Us to Live More Vibrant Lives. And that helps people who are navigating loss to transform to growth and vitality. You can find them both on Amazon, but come along for the tour. It's much more fun. If you're just joining us, my guests are Doug Lennick and Chuck Wackendorfer. They're the co-authors of Don't Wait for Someone Else to Fix It and the co-founders of Think to Perform, a high-performance leadership development firm serving small and large organizations in a variety of industries. I am your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. Of course, I wish we had the ability to work through all of your 8 behaviors, but they're so meaty. Of course, we'll get through maybe half of them or 2/3 of them. So the 2 that I want to make sure that we cover next, of course, has to be achieve purposeful goals. And what I loved about that one, gentlemen, if one of you could speak to this, is, you talk about, you encourage people to adopt the WIFM, I think is what you call that. Anyway, the goal achievement model, what stands for what do you want for yourself? And this approach requires achieving self-awareness about what you want, applying an acid test to your goals, and following 5 clear steps for achieving these goals. If you could just speak a little bit, I mean, this notion, I don't think, from what I can see in the work that I do, that few people really do first set out to achieve purposeful goals but then too have a plan to do so.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting one too. By the way, I loved how you pronounced it. We pronounce it witty whiffy, but
Witty whiffy, okay.
yeah, WDYWFY, and the notion is, and this really relates directly to the alignment model. Getting what one wants for oneself is a rightfully selfish process, provided what one wants is in harmony with principles and values.
Mm-hmm.
So achieving what I want in the middle frame is totally rightful, provided it's guided by those principles and values.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the guidelines. And then it's as simple. And one of the things Chuck and I spend a lot of time trying to help people understand is simple and easy are not synonyms. Goal achievement is simple and hard. It's simple and hard. And each of the steps can be hard by itself. So the first step is to just have a goal, which in the acronym Witty Whiffy, there is no G. So the first step, you got to take that one. That's the acid test. So for a want to become a goal, it has to be a want that passes the acid test. The acid test is can I, which means do I have the talent and the skills? And will I decide? So talent plus skills plus decision making. Can I and will I afford it? And if the answers are not yes and yes, I am dreaming. It's okay to dream, but that's not a realistic goal.
Yeah.
So taking the first step is plenty hard. The second step is to have a plan. Plans come fully equipped in what we call key activities. I, nobody but me, must, non-optional, do, non-passive. 3 words. I must do. That's my plan. Third step, implement the plan. This is when it gets ugly. Now I actually have to convert from deciding to doing. And that's hard, by the way. A lot of people have a plan that they decide to execute and don't execute. Mm-hmm. There is a difference between decision and doing. So we got to decide and then accompany that with doing. That's execution. That's the third step. Fourth step, control direction. What that simply means is your plan will not be perfect, and implementation of your imperfect plan won't work. So you will need to control direction. You will start out and you will discover along the way you have to make corrections. You have to make some course corrections. Keep score, redirect. And the fifth step is to throw off discouragement.
Yep.
Full achievement comes fully equipped with discouragement. And if you can't throw it off, it's going to kick your butt and you're going to not get what you were wanting to get, which is rightfully yours, provided it's in alignment with your principles and values. And I'll throw it to Chuck.
Yeah, what we're talking about, Elise, is difference between goal setting and goal achievement.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of people, and I just had this conversation with a company this morning. They were really good at goal setting. Right? We set a goal, it's specific, it's measurable, attainable, results-based, time-bound. We've all heard the acronym SMART. What they didn't understand, and to Doug's point, is what their key activities were. Who's going to do how much and how often to achieve that goal. So what they realized is they set these goals, but no idea of key activities. Nobody answered the acid test question because we didn't know what we had to do to achieve that. And they're not on track, not even close.
Right.
And it's so that's where people quit. They set a goal, but they don't have the key activities. They don't answer the acid test question, and they fail, and they have a bad expectation around setting goals. So it's all 4 steps. Mm-hmm. Have a plan, implement the plan, control direction, and throw off discouragement that increase my odds for goal achievement.
Oh, we could have a whole show just about that, couldn't we? Yes, Doug, you were going to say?
We could have a whole show about that, but the thing about goal achievement is oftentimes people assume that whatever plan they authored has to be executed perfectly or it won't work. And the truth is, the plan they authored is imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't know that.
Yes.
They don't know that. So I'll use this as an example. Since we're on TV, I can do this. Imagine here, my index finger is underneath my chin. Mm-hmm. And I decide my goal is to get my index finger to the top of my head without leaving my face. Okay? So I've got to move this up here, and I got to end up here. And and I thought, well, my plan is the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So I decide I got a plan. I'm going to go straight up my face, and I'm going to be up here at the top of my head. So now that's the plan. Now I execute the plan, and I begin moving up. Now, because I'm talking, my mouth is open. And talking, my finger ends up in my mouth. All of a sudden, I got to get out of my mouth. I have to control direction. I got to back up. I got to figure out another way. So the process of controlling direction is taking steps 1 and 2 over and over and over again until you get your index finger up to the top of your head. That's the deal.
That was an extremely useful example. Of course, where I went on that, Doug, was the only way to do that was to go actually through your mouth, through your face, through your brain to the top of this. And that would probably not work out well for anybody. Which speaks to just how badly plans can be orchestrated too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you can see how it plays out. But that's metaphorically what we're trying to help people do. But it is very doable. I can say for absolute certain, we've helped thousands of people achieve what they want for themselves. Now, does anybody ever achieve perfection? No. So we talk about progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection is the name of the game. We're not going to, the human condition is such that we will always see problem and opportunity in our circumstance.
Right.
So, and I think that to that point around progress, the nice thing about the 8 essentials is you don't have to implement all 8. If you took something out of one of those essentials and start to implement it, you will have an impact in your life or in your business. That's the nice thing. Is it'd be great if I implemented all 8. That's probably not going to happen. I mean, Doug and I'm 62 years old. Doug's 70. We've been working on the 8 essentials, and I will still continue to work on the 8 essentials for the rest of my life. And there's always opportunities for me to get better. But I could start with focusing on one essential, and I guarantee you'll have an impact.
Okay, so Chuck, that is a great way to finish the show. We are out of time, and I got to tell you, that was beautiful because people could go, "Oh my God, these 8 things! I got to get good at all 8 of these things." No, if you just did one of them, worked on one of them, you would move the needle on this deal. So, Doug, you wanted to say something, and we got to close the show.
I would say this: what we wanted to do, and what we've meant for this book to be, is a used book.
Yes,
a used book. And literally, the idea is you can open it up to any page, any chapter, and if all you did was focus on that one essential, it will change your life.
Agreed, Doug. Agreed. Guys, I'm so happy to know you. Thank you so much for coming into my sphere,
my
world.
It's been a pleasure.
You can run, but you can't hide. I somehow show up at people's doors, so it could happen, just so you know. Thank you both for being on Working on Purpose. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure's ours. Thanks, Elise. Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Listeners and viewers, if you want to learn about Doug Lennick, Chuck Wackendorf, their work at Think to Perform, or their book, Don't Wait for Someone Else to Fix It, you can start by going to think2perform.com, think2perform.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on the air with Travis James, the founder and chief technology officer of Tribe Health Solutions, talking about his passion to democratize health records and put them into the hands of patients. He also gave us a very powerful primer on the uses of ChatGPT. Next, we will be on the air with Curtis Bateman, who is the co-author of Change, How to Turn Uncertainty into Tomorrow. See you there. And remember that work is an integral and important part of our lives and can be one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.